Sixth grade lesson 9.1 is teaching us about independent and dependent variables, where we have two unknown pieces of information. In order to get the answer to the dependent variable, the dependent unknown, we need to know another piece of information, the independent variable. So the independent variable is a value that will help get us the answer to the unknown dependent variable. So the independent variable is kind of the cause of things, what's going on. Dependent variable is what's affected by it, or what the outcome will be, or what the answer will be. The answer depends on that one piece of information. It's waiting for that one piece of information, the independent variable. Let's see how they are looking for us to understand that. All right, so we're using the same steps we've used all along for word problems. We read it, we underline what they're asking us to do, we circle the information given, we'll draw it if we need to. I don't think they're asking us to solve anything here. We're just trying to identify the information that's given to us. So let's read it first. Jerry burns 5.8 calories for every minute that she jogs. Identify the independent and dependent variables in this situation. Then write an equation to represent the relationship between the numbers of minutes Jerry jogs and the total number of calories she burns. So they want us to identify independent and dependent variables and then write an equation that represents this situation. So why do we need to use a variable? Well, there's some numbers we don't know, right? So we could add over here, I don't know some numbers. Okay, well, what are those unknown numbers that we don't know? Well, what we don't know is, how many minutes does she jog? If I knew how many minutes she jogged, I could tell you how many total calories that she burned. But at this point in time, I can't tell you how many calories she burned either. That's another unknown, right? Because I don't know how many minutes she went. So the two things that I don't know is minutes. We'll say that's M. How many minutes did she jog? And then how many calories burned? I don't know. I can't figure it out. We'll call that C. I can't figure that out until you tell me this piece of information. This depends on that, right? So we're going to let C represent the total number of calories she burns. And M is going to represent the number of minutes she jogs. The one that is dependent and waiting and must have to wait on the other piece of information is the calories burned. I can't tell you how many calories she burned until you come back and tell me how many minutes she did, right? So the dependent variable is C. It's depending, it's relying, it counts on the independent variable M. Tell me how many minutes, then I'll calculate it for you, right? So the total calories burned, our outcome, our answer, is equal to 5.8. Remember, she did 5.8 calories for every minute that she jogs. 5.8 for 1 minute, then another 5.8 for 2, and then for 3, and then for 4. Repeated addition, which is multiplication. And the number of minutes, I don't know. We let that be M. So the equation C equals 5.8 times M, or 5.8 M, represents the number of calories Jerry burns if she jogs M number of minutes, where C is the dependent variable, the one that's waiting for in order to be solved, waiting for us to find out how many M, the independent variable, how many minutes. When I know that, I can calculate to find the dependent variable. And so that's what they're asking us to do in this section, is identify which one's the one that counts on the other, which is independent and can stand, and it is the one that we manipulate and change and affects the other one. In this case, this is the one that is independent and we can change it. And once we change it, it affects that guy. He's dependent on him. I can't solve him until I know him. Let's look at another example. With practice, this becomes easier, but knowing the difference between my independent variable and my dependent variable does help us, especially as we get into later situations where we're dealing with the graphing of that information and we want to graph a dependent comparison to the independent variable. So this lesson is just helping us get familiar with, oh, I have two unknown pieces of information. One relies on the other, and knowing which one relies on which. So same steps, we're going to read it. We have Laura Lee spending the afternoon bowling with her friends. Each game she plays costs $3.25, and there's also a one-time shoe rental fee of $2.50. There's two unknowns here. One, of course, is that answer, right? That's always the unknown. We got to calculate something, right? They want us to identify the independent and dependent variables and write an equation that represents the relationship. Let's think about what we don't know. We don't know how much money she spent, do we? How much money did she spend? What was the cost of her whole bowling trip? And they have us calling that C right here, total cost in dollars. And part of the reason we don't know the cost of that is because each game that she bowled at the bowling alley that day cost $3.25. So it's $3.25 for one game. And then if they do another game, it's another $3.25. And if they do another game, it's another $3.25. Well, how many times did she bowl? I don't know. How many games did she do? I don't know. We don't know the number of games. We'll call that G because they called it that. Those are our two unknowns. How much did it cost her? And how many games did she bowl? Which one relies on the other? Does this affect this, or does cost affect games? Right? She's doing $3.25 per game. I need to know how many games she's going to do, right? This is my independent variable because I need to know that to solve that. So my independent variable is how many games she's going to bowl. When I know that, I can calculate through and figure out how much money she spent, cost. So the total cost relies on, it's dependent upon the calculation I will do. She's $3.25 per game times however many games she's going to do, we don't know yet. Plus there's an extra fee. There's the one-time fee. This is not a repeated fee. You go in, you rent the stinky shoes that somebody else just had their feet in and sweated their feet in there, and they charge you $2.50 for the whole time you're there. It's not per game. That one is just for the whole time you're there. So $2.50 is a one-time fee added to the $3.25 per game. When they tell us how many games she did, that piece of information is independent because this relies on that. When they tell me that, I can solve that. So the equation C equals 325G plus $2.50 for the stinky, sweaty shoes. Then I can solve it. This represents the total cost in dollars C that Laura Lee spends if she bowls G amount of games, where C is the dependent variable. The cost depends. It depends on how many games she plays, right? How much did it cost her? I don't know. It depends. Depends on how much games she does. So that's how you identify dependent and independent variable. The depends one is, it depends on how many she did, right? So use your equation now. We have the equation. There it is. They put it there for us. To find the total cost that Laura Lee has if she plays 3 games. Well, now we're just in a plug and play scenario. They said, hey, she did 3 games. Cool. Okay, G is 3. Games is 3. Plug in 3. 325 times 3 is going to work out to be $9.75. Add $2.50 to that, and that is going to be $12.25. So it will cost Laura Lee $12.25 to play 3 games. Once they told me how many games, I could solve her cost. But until they told me how many games, I could not figure out the cost. So cost depended upon knowing how many games. That's what dependent and independent variable is. With practice, it starts to become clear. You start recognizing it. And again, you're also getting that practice of generating equations and expressions out of a word problem. The more we practice that, the easier it becomes. So get in there, get the practice. You're going to do great. Will you mess up a few? Maybe. That's okay, right? The more we practice, the better we become.